and it pops right off. Take a look at this. It's going to get a lot of gunk starting to build up in there, because if you're diving all over the place, you're going to get sand, mud, dirt, paint, whatever is going to be gunked up in there, and you don't want that. All that is just from the reg housing. Give it a good wipe down, nothing too fancy, and set that aside. And with the reg cap off, you can now see the mini reg on the inside of there. When you look down into the housing, it's going to have 6 holes, and it's going to be held in there with 2 things. There's a set screw in the very front and your velocity adjustment on the side. Doesn't matter which order you take them off in, but they both have to be removed nevertheless. I just start with the velocity screw. Comes out really easy, little goofy shaped screw. I like to wipe it down just, you know, for the hell of it. Gets dirty too. Set that aside. And then we go for the set screw. Now this is a little tiny screw, little 2mm job. Stick a wrench in there, preferably a T-wrench, because they're kind of easy to strip, these little guys, if you tighten them too much. Okay. And once you get that out, make sure you put this somewhere where you're not going to lose it. It's very small and something you really don't want to lose. Alright, now to remove the actual mini reg itself. What I like to do, there's a couple different ways you can do this. Remember the 2 screws that we took out of the board? These little guys? What I like to do is I like to thread one in the very middle hole, because these holes are threaded just like that. Then I take my locking pliers and I grab a hold and pull. This brings the reg to the surface, so it's almost flush with the bottom. Then I take the other screw and do the same thing on the other side. So you have 2 screws sticking out like that. Then from there, take both screws and just lift out, and you have your mini reg. Undo it. Your mini reg housing, it's always a good idea to wipe it down after you pull it out. Unthread the screws and wipe it down. Just get all the old grease, whatever you put on there, oil that might have built up, out. There you have your mini reg. Make sure none of the O-rings are flawed. If you go to www.fixmyangel.com, you can order an O-ring pack. It's got spares, it's got a solenoid gasket, it's got the mini reg O-ring, and any other just odds and ends O-rings. It's always good to have them laying around, because, you know, the O-rings are never gonna blow out on a regular basis, but, you know, after a while they do get pretty beat up and just after normal wear and tear. So it's always a good idea to have some of those around, because you never know when you're going to need to replace them. You can set your mini reg aside, and now you can see down into the, well, you can't see it because of the camera, but you can now see down into the housing. And down there is a screw that you must remove in order to get this handle off of the gun. Once again, it's a metric screw, same size as the one that you used to take this off. It's 4mm. Start to unscrew it. Shouldn't be in there very tight, or just tight enough to make it seal. Once you get that off, pops right out. And set that aside. And then the last screw holding the mini reg housing on is this screw right here, which is in between the trigger frame and the housing. It's just a simple screw, nothing special. It's a 3mm screw. You just unscrew it like this. Making a video. Once you have that screw, set it aside. Mini reg just pulls right off. Make sure you don't lose this little O-ring. Just the O-ring in there and set the mini reg housing aside. Alright, and from here I like to remove the trigger frame. To do that, 2 screws. One on the inside of the trigger right there. The other one is on the very back of the gun right here behind the trigger frame. Doesn't really matter which one you take off first. They're both 3mm screws. Take the first screw off. And sometimes you might have a bit of difficulty getting the one that's inside of the trigger housing out with a T-wrench, just because there's no slot on the bottom of the trigger frame like there is on the front. But if you use just a regular style Allen wrench, you shouldn't have any problems getting it off. This one might just take a bit longer. I usually just like to get it to the point where I can loosen it up with my fingers. Once that's removed, very carefully you can pull out the trigger frame. Now be careful that you're going to lose a lot of things when you do this. Make sure you